Welcome everybody to Hump Day Hangouts, episode number 549. Today is the 4th of June, 2025, and this is the episode where we definitely do not mention 2FA. Just don't talk about 2FA. All right, moving on. I got a couple things I do want to talk about. We've got two things. Well, one isn't really so much coming up as ongoing. But if you haven't heard about the Local Mastery newsletter, this is the paid newsletter that basically what we're going to do, and we're already doing for those who jumped on a couple weeks ago or about a month ago now when we started it, is we're sending out weekly or once a week this newsletter with 5 to 7 actionable local SEO insights that are based on the real world things Bradley's been doing. We've got action items for each, as well as a deep dive into one of the topics that we think is going to be the one that people are definitely going to want to know the most about. So far, it's been going really well. The newsletters are great. We've been getting really good feedback, and we understand too that sometimes you just don't have the time for maybe something more advanced, more in-depth. But this is something literally that we were like, we want to keep this under 30 minutes and really provide the value there. So our goal is that you can get through this newsletter in 30 minutes and put at least one of these to work in the week before you get the next newsletter, if not more, if you've got a team or you just really want to go for it. So you can check that out at localmastery.semanticmastery.com. If you're not already signed up, highly suggest you do. And it is priced as well to really make sense that everybody who watches us can be a subscriber to this. Coming up in a few weeks, we are going to be rolling out the directory hybrid agency training again, the phase 1 training. Bradley, do you want to remind people a little bit about this? Who's it for, who should be kind of keeping an eye out for this, and what you're going to be covering in the 12-week course?
Yeah, it's for people looking to increase their leads into their own agency and to land more clients. It's the directory outreach process that I developed for over 4 years now. It's been really refined. Actually, I've been spending the last few days working a lot on the phase 2 stuff, which is the sales and fulfillment. So phase 1, we've been through 3 groups now. So it's really refined. I've added a lot of additional kind of automations to the last kind of part of it. And that's what I've been working on for the last 2 weeks now. A lot is trying to get those SOPs done for that. Like, it's one thing to build all the automations, which takes a lot of time in itself. And in trialing and erroring, and if anybody does any automations in high level, you know what I'm talking about. You have to test everything, and it's just a lot of trial and error to get the automations to work the way that you want them. And so I did all that several weeks ago, and it took a lot more time than I expected. And then developing the SOPs for how to configure everything and how to work through it and all of that takes an enormous amount of time. And so I'm a bit behind on that. But the goal is, with the phase 1 is done, other than, like I said, the kind of automation stuff that has been recently added, which I'm still working on the SOPs now, but that'll be available when the next group starts. So phase 1 is really well developed. Phase 2, we've yet to launch that, but we're going to be launching that concurrently with the next phase 1 group, so that graduates of the previous phase 1 groups can go to phase 2. Phase 2 is sales and fulfillment, which is really about, and it's only a 6-week program. But again, that should all be launching concurrently. But back to phase 1. Phase 1 is specifically about selecting an industry, identifying low kind of competition areas within that industry, developing a directory and a brand around that industry, and then starting to build your own kind of lead generation assets to then use as sales tools, so that when you start receiving inbound leads from your directory outreach, which is all done via cold email, you'll be able to sell them on your services, because you can point to properties or assets that are currently ranking for the same products and services that they provide. And so you can point to that as kind of a sales tool, and then you can monetize them either directly or indirectly. But anyways, like I said, this third group that's gone through, we have our daily office hour calls Monday through Friday, which I'm available for an hour via a Zoom meeting for anybody to just pop in and request support or help at any time for anything related to the DHA program. And in this last group, like, out of 12 weeks, and we actually ended up going 13 weeks. And out of 13 weeks, I swear to God, on less than a dozen times, people popped in for questions. So it just goes to show how well developed the SOPs are and everything else. But we have group accountability meetings on Monday, and then we have daily office hours meetings. It's not required to attend. It's only if you need it. You can jump in and get support during that time. And then, again, there's some kind of benefits and perks with being going through the coaching program. You'll get access to the managed high level account by us during the time that you're in the program. Once you're done with the program, you then have the ability to stay subscribed for 33% less than what you would get subscribed if you were paying high level directly. And it's managed. That means we manage a lot of the deployment and things like that, which will make it more efficient for you. So there's just a number of benefits for it for those people that need it. As I mentioned before, though, people can go through the same process if they just join the mastermind, because we have the SOPs in the mastermind for the whole process. So people that are self-sufficient, self-serving, whatever, you can go through it on your own. A number of people need the additional coaching and support, and really an accountability, the accountability of having a group. And so, and look, I get that. Sometimes I have to do those things in order to keep a commitment to myself, is to be accountable to others, or else I would break the commitment. So there's that whole coaching and accountability aspect of the DHA program that is available for those that need it. That's what it's for.
Outstanding. All right, guys. Well, that's everything I wanted to touch on. Anything else, or is it time for questions?
Let's do it.
Any questions?
All right.
Well, if you guys notice, I'm not in my RV anymore, so I got moved into my new home.
Oh, so now you got the fancy background. You got the space background again.
I'm not. I say I moved in. No, I'm staying in my new home. I'm not moved in yet. Like, I'm still unpacking, and just had an enormous amount of trouble with this stupid computer and like all the 2FA stuff that's really set in the last year and a half. I haven't used my desktop in a year and a half, and so when I reactivated it, I've spent a day and a half doing nothing but 2FA stuff and getting everything connected, and it's just been absolutely irritating and very inefficient. But a few more days of this, and then everything should be set up properly. So hopefully I'll be more productive after that. So
I mean, that's why they have USB sticks and dongles for that, right?
yeah. I've never used any of those, but what a pain in the ass. So
The
anyway,
issue is only when you lose one of those USB sticks.
that's right. Well, that's funny, because one of my Microsoft 365, we use that for my white label services. And so I have a number of Microsoft 365 business accounts for different organizations. And for semantic links, I got locked out of my primary admin account because, and this was so stupid, I've spent like over 4 hours now with support of Microsoft trying to get access to my own damn accounts again, because they didn't require 2 versions of MFA or multi-factor authentication. All that, I think, and I was complaining to the support tech at Microsoft about it. I was like, I can't believe you guys don't require 2 verification methods, because once you connect Authenticator, that's the and it doesn't require you to use other verification methods. If you lose access to Authenticator, or you change your mobile device or something like that, you have no way of getting in to your account, none whatsoever. And so that's what happened. I changed my phone in the last year and a half, and that was the last time and anyway, long story short, it keeps prompting me to grab the code from the Authenticator app, but it never gets to the code never shows up. And so I've spent over 4 hours over the last 2 days, and that is not a joke, with Microsoft, and I still don't have access to my account. It's unbelievable, man. And I told them, I was like, how is it that you guys could possibly allow an account to be created without 2 separate versions of MFA or methods? You know what I mean? Because I'm sure that this is common. So we were on a support call with my project manager, Samantha, today, because she also has admin access to the Microsoft 365 account. And so the support people at Microsoft said, if you get somebody else on with us that has admin access, she can go in and reset the security credentials. So guess what? We scheduled the call, because my project manager's in Philippines. So we scheduled the support call today for 11 a.m. We get on the call 5 minutes before the call. Samantha's saying, I can't get my Authenticator's not sending me the code to get in my account. She did the same thing. She changed her phone in the last 6 months or something like that. And so now she has no access to her account. So now the 2 admin accounts, there's 18 users in that account, and the 2 admin accounts are both locked out. And so we've got another support call scheduled for tomorrow. And it was just a fucking nightmare, man. And I'm really irritated about it. And I told the Microsoft people, I said, had I known it was going to be like this, I would have never used Microsoft accounts, Anyway, sorry to complain, but it's been an enormous nightmare. I've wasted so much time the last few days on just trying to get access to an account. It slowed everything down. But that said, let's go ahead and jump into work, guys. I've got a number of questions here. Oh, but yeah, first thing before we get started is I want to promote this again. Go check out helpandseoout.com. Dave Kraljic. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly, Dave. Forgive me. But helping SEO out is very much like help a reporter out, except it's specifically for doing link exchanges with other local SEOs. So it's specifically for local SEO, basically. And it's doing link exchanges. It's free, guys. It's free. We're not going to make any money off promoting this. This is because he's a mastermind member. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's free right now because he's trying to get enough users in and an inventory of link opportunities for link exchanges. So just go sign up at helpandseoout.com if you are into local SEO and you have clients. This is not for lead gen sites, guys. This is for actual client sites so that you can do link exchanges with other actual local business sites. So you can do topical link exchanges. So like, in other words, like for example, a tree service contractor in one city, you could link to another tree service contractor in another city that wouldn't, where they're not competitors. Or you could do a geographic link exchange where there's geographic relevance, right? So in other words, you could have a landscaper and a tree service company or an HVAC company or whatever in the same city that link to each other because they're not competing for customers of the same service, but they're in the same location. So in some cases, you can get both a topical and a geographic link. That's both, right? It's both topically and geographically relevant, which would be like the example I started to mention a moment ago, which was like if a landscaper and a tree service company are in the same city or the same general physical area, but the landscaper doesn't do tree service work and the tree service company doesn't do landscaping work, then you could do link exchanges between those. And that would be a very beneficial link because it's both topically and geographically relevant. So again, just go check out Helping SEO Out. It's great service, very cool service. It's free for now, and it can give you an opportunity to help your clients get better results by doing link exchanges. Okay, so check it out. All right, now we'll get into questions. Okay, so the first one is from Huzaifa. He says, do you have an email sequence for the AI answering service or lead management service? Yes, I sure do. Next. Huzaifa, again, I've said before, I'm not going to share my sequences on Hump Day Hangouts. That's mastermind member material. Do we have those? Yes, we do. They're in the snapshots. They're already in the snapshots. So if you're talking about, like the nurture sequence, the sales sequence or email sequence for selling those services, yes, they're already in the snapshots and the workflows, etc. So they're email snippets in high level. I've got a 5 email sequence for each one of those services. So there's 4 services. There's 5 email sequence for each of them, which is for after you get on the listing delivery call, which is the start of the sales conversation, depending on what you discuss with the contact and what you've determined are the most relevant services to promote to them or to pitch to them, to offer to them. Then after you get off you can present them with the offer on the call if they're ready for it then. Many of them are not. That's my experience. Many of them aren't ready to check out right then and there on the call. If they are, by all means, you can send them the checkout link. But if they're not, then I tell them, hey, no problem. You don't have to decide right now. What we're going to do is, what the hell just happened? That was weird. Must have just been an update. If they're not ready right then, I say hey, that's fine. You don't have to decide right now. If it's all right with you, what I'm going to do is send you a few emails over the next couple of days, specifically with more information about this service. And you can always reply back to me if you have any additional questions, or just click through and sign up whenever you want. There will be a link to the checkout page for the service in the email. And I say, is that fair? Does that sound good? And I nod my head, and then they say, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I just plug them in. So as soon as we get off the call, then I go in and mark them with the tag as to which service it is that I'm going to plug them into the sequence. I don't want to plug them into more than one sequence at a time. They might be candidates, right? There might be multiple services that are relevant to them. But as I've talked about on previous Hump Day Hangouts, when there are multiple services, if they are not ready to subscribe to multiple services, which they typically are not, because they usually want to test one or two, like dip their toes into the water, so to speak, before jumping in, right? So typically what I will do then is promote, even if multiple services would be relevant to them. I'm going to kind of push more on one of two services depending on how the conversation went with them. And that is either going to be the review service or now the AI answering service. Those are my two primary services that I want to pitch because those tend to have the quickest effect on the results, like for the business's bottom line, so to speak. Like, here's the thing with with the review service, it we can get them results fairly quickly, and depending on their specific area and what the review counts and velocities are of their competitors. Typically with tree service contractors, in most cases, if I can get them with about 20 reviews in 7 to 10 days time frame, then we're usually going to see a significant lift in maps. Like, in other words, a significant ranking performance boost, a ranking gain in maps search, right? Which gives them more exposure. They can see the review count go up fairly rapidly. And so that's tangible. It's something they can see. And it typically will, and in the local search grid report, it usually will show significant maps ranking improvement, plus like coverage area will typically expand a bit too. And so that's something that is very tangible that we can show very quick results through the initial review request campaign from a customer list, which I will ask them on the call. Do they have an existing customer list that we can import to immediately reach out for review requests, right? But then any new job that they close from the point that we start the reviews campaign going forward, after that, then what I do is there's a landing page set up on a branded subdomain for them that then the contractor or somebody at his company will go to that page URL at the end of every job or at the end of every day and then submit. It's just a form that says first name, last name, phone number, email. That's it. And they just submit the customers' names for any of the jobs that they closed that day. And what that does is automatically adds them into the review campaign. So I do the review campaign or the AI answering service because the AI answering service, if a company already has a decent online presence, they have a decent lead volume, they might not be closing a lot of leads, but they have decent lead volume. Then in the conversation, if we get to the bottom of like, what are some of the issues that they're facing in their company, right? Which might be that they're not following up with leads. So they have good lead volume, but they're not closing a lot of them because they're being beaten out by competitors because they're not following up in a timely manner and things like that. Then an answering service may be the better option. And so I might pitch them on the answering service instead of doing any additional marketing. Because if they've already got a decent presence and they've got a decent lead volume, but they're having trouble closing jobs and because of inefficiencies and how they follow up and manage those leads, then one of the first things I want to pitch to them is an answering service, because that is typically going to reduce the number of calls that they get significantly, because now the calls all go to an AI answering service. It reduces the annoyance from spam calls, robocalls, solicitation calls, etc. It also usually helps them to secure more leads, like convert more leads into actual booked estimate requests or quote requests. Do you understand? Because instead of having the phone calls go to voicemail and then the consumer, the contact that called the company to request an estimate will typically, when they get a voicemail, they might leave a voicemail message, they may not, but even if they leave a voicemail message, they're typically going to call the next company in wherever search venue they were using, right? Because they typically want to close that loop now, right? Instead of leaving a message and then saying, oh, well, I'll just wait for them to call me back. They're usually like, okay, I left a message, but I'm going to call the next contractor, try to get this estimate scheduled, if that makes sense. So when customers call an AI answering service, they get that closure right away, which is, okay, my information has been submitted. I'm going to receive a call back from the estimator to schedule it. And so that's why I'm saying those are the two primary services that I'm typically going to push now, because AI answering service wasn't something that I could have even pushed a month ago or 6 weeks ago because it wasn't ready. But now it is. Does that make sense? So do I have answering service or sequences for that? Yes, I do. They're in the mastermind. They're 100% available to anybody in the mastermind. So come get them over there. Okay. Michael says, do G-Stacks and Cloud Stacks still work in 2025? As far as I know, they do. I still use them. It doesn't feel like a long-term viable strategy. Yeah, but people have been saying that since 2015. Michael, here it is 2025. 10 years ago, people were saying, well, Google Stacks doesn't seem like it would stick. It's too easy for Google to just go in and kill that. We've been hearing that. How many times have you heard SEO is dead? I don't know you, Michael, so I don't know how long you've been in the industry, but I've been in the industry for 15 years, and I've heard SEO is dead for 15 years, right? Granted, I believe now SEO as we know it, as traditional SEO, like search engine optimization, I believe that is dying. But it's not. I just mean it's evolving because we're still going to be optimizing for search, just maybe not search engines. Maybe now we're optimizing for search chats or LLMs, right? So we're still optimizing for search, but it's no longer search engine optimization with traditional search engines because they are fairly quickly being replaced, right? And so, anyways, long story short, for years I've been hearing about 10 years ago when we launched RYS Academy, the original version of it, which was where Google Stacks were born. Like that's where they pretty much were invented by Marco and Dr. Gary Kirwan back in 2015 when we launched that first product, RYS Academy, which was for Google Stacks. We heard within the first couple of months, right? There was those YouTubers that do launch jacking and things like that and affiliate promotions that would say like, do Google Stacks work? Here's the truth and blah, 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 right? And record videos about how it's not a long-term viable long-term strategy and it's too easy for Google to crack down on that. That was 10 years ago. And Google Stacks have been enormously valuable for SEO for years. And so do they still work in 2025? As far as I know, they still do. And I don't see why they wouldn't. And I tend to ignore it when people say it doesn't feel like in some cases I could see where that's logical. But like I said, it's been one of those things that has been a kind of a mainstay for a decade. And I've heard that a lot. So anyways, are they still working? As far as I know, yeah, because the way that I use Google or Google Sites and Drive Stacks, et cetera, is to push to kind of validate the local brand or the location, right? So the local business, as well as also to kind of increase relevance. And it's because it's Google property with the Google Stacks, at least, that it's effective. With Cloud Stacks, yeah, Cloud Stacks can be effective too, but I do Cloud Stacks in a very different way than a way a lot of the others teach. For me, a Cloud Stack is a cloud page. So it's a tier one link that is linking directly to the client's money site or tier zero assets, which includes an ID page and then Google Business Profile Map, right? So usually we'll do an anchor text link to the money site, anchor text link to the ID page, and usually a Google Map embed at tier one. And we'll do that with cloud pages. And then at tier two, instead of doing a bunch of other cloud pages linking to that cloud page, that's perfectly viable strategy too. I just don't do it that way. Instead, what I do is just geographic or niche relevant niche edits to point to the cloud page that I created. That is what I call Cloud Stack because I'm trying to push either topical or geographic or both relevance into the cloud page. And with individual Cloud Stack pages, for me, like I look at trust flow and really topical trust flow. Trust flow is a secondary metric to topical trust flow. And so if there's no backlinks already pointing to a cloud page, a newly created cloud page is not going to have any link equity flowing into it, right? At least none that's measurable in any sort of topical category, which is why I prefer to use cloud pages at tier one and then do topical or geographic links with, specific link equity, either topical or geographic, pointing to the cloud page so that I can turn that cloud page into not just a high domain authority or high DR type site, but one that also is now producing link equity with relevance, topical or geographic. Does that make sense? So that's why I do it that way. And yes, as far as I'm concerned, they're still absolutely viable because now we can create a lot of cloud pages at tier one to create domain diversity, IP diversity, et cetera. And then we can use each one of those, which by the way, the cloud pages, you can be very aggressive with link building to cloud pages because they are on high authority, high DA, high DR sites or domains. You can be very aggressive, both in velocity and more aggressive with keyword anchor text ratios and your anchor text profile, if that makes sense. So cloud pages are a great tier one link. As far as Cloud Stacks, like I said, I don't do them like most others do them. I do them specifically to push relevance into the cloud page, right? Okay, hopefully that's clear. And yeah, we have some training in our mastermind specifically about cloud pages and how I use them and et cetera. Yaks training for yet another cloud stacking software, which is a great tool. Huzaifa's next question says, what settings do you use in your sending schedule on Instantly? I'm not sure what you're asking for, but let's just go view it. And you could probably get what you need from just viewing it. So again, stand by, and I'll pull it open. Let's go to campaigns. I know you're not seeing my screen yet. Just give me 1 minute. 82% through this campaign. 85% open rate. Cold email doesn't work. 85% open rate in the last 4 weeks, guys. Think about that, right? That's nuts. Unbelievable. Cold email works, guys. When you do it right, it works. All right. So here are the options. I think this is what or do you say schedule or options? Sending schedule. Okay. So the schedule, I do 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. If that's what you were asking, there's your answer. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, so this one is Greg. Oh, hey, Greg, I see you're on, by the way. What's up, Greg? I hope you're doing well, man. Greg is a former master. He comes and goes, and I completely understand, but I appreciate you coming and asking questions here as well, Greg. So he says, hey, Bradley, I have 2 options for the target URL of a niche edit from QGP. They located for me. It is a health topic site, and the page matches the topic of my site. I was going to link to my homepage. However, the URL and the title of the QGP matches an internal subcategory page on my site. The page is the health benefits of a hot tub. I have a subcategory page with a URL of domain hot tubs benefits. Subcategory page on my site is not critical and will be challenging to rank, but it links back up directly to the main category page, which links out to the other subcategory pages of some of which are important. Excuse me. If I use the QGP target URL as this subcategory URL due to the exact matching of topic, will that add more relevance and therefore more link power, which will bounce around the site, or should I link to my homepage? Thanks. No, your assumption there was your logic, so to speak, Greg, was sound. I would do the same thing. I would do a deep link because it's a more relevant match. Does that make sense? Relevance matching is where I see the most value from links, is through relevance matching. Okay. So if you have a internal page, which would be considered a deep link, right? So when you're doing an external link to an internal page, that may be one that's not quite as important and blah, 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 but it has an internal link then to a top level page. If it's a more relevant match to link to that internal page, like a deep link to that internal page, I would go with that route. Because number one, typically the homepages of these types of sites are hammered with backlinks. And when I say these types of sites, typically the homepages of all sites are hammered with backlinks, and inner pages are neglected with links. And I see that all the time in competitive link analysis reports or audits that I do, et cetera, is link distribution. That's the last bullet point in my audit, is link distribution. And so I always go look at the root domain of the target site that I'm analyzing. And then I look at the page. So I'll go look at the root domain in Majestic, and then I go to pages, and it will show me the backlinks. All I care about is the referring domain count that of the page URLs from that domain. In other words, for inner pages of the site, for all pages on the site, posts included, what are the referring domain counts that have links pointing to each of those pages, right? And typically what I see is the homepage has been hammered and the inner pages are neglected almost entirely in a lot of cases. So like a lot of local SEO campaigns that I analyze, we'll see. I know you're not local SEO, Greg, but that since I'm in a local SEO space, that's what I'm analyzing 95% of the time. And what we usually see is the homepage is hammered with dozens and sometimes hundreds of referring domains. And inner pages have less than 5, like links from 5 referring domains or less to any inner page. And so that is a significant imbalance. And so I always recommend doing internal linking or linking to inner pages, as long as you have proper internal linking from within the main target site, right? And so in this particular example, it would be a good opportunity to use a more relevant link, or a link with better relevance matching, as a deep link to an inner page that then has an internal link up to the top level page that you technically really wanted to link to originally, because it provides more relevance to an appropriate page. And then internal link equity tends to be stronger than external link equity. Dory Friend did a lot of testing on this from SEO Nitro and SEO Intelligence Agency. And a lot of you guys know who Dory Friend is, SEO Rockstar. She promotes that, or hosts that every year. And she's done a lot of testing on that, and internal links are significant. So if you can power up an internal link through an external link that matches 100% relevance matched, it's going to create stronger internal link equity anyway. Does that make sense? So I think your logic was sound, and I would link to that deeper page is what I'm saying. Okay. Good question. As I've said, should we create entity assets for the directory brand? Yes, of course you should. You want to build that brand up as much as possible. For the Felling Pro, for your LLG brands, remember, those are sales tools. You can build a brand around that if you want, but it's difficult, more difficult to do without Google Business Profiles. And remember, I'm not teaching or promoting to you guys to go out and try to get spam GBPs anymore. Okay, I've completely abandoned that strategy. Completely abandoned that strategy because of all the problems with Google Business Profiles when they're not real valid business locations. So for the LLG sites or your local lead generation brand, not so much, right? If you are able to get GBPs for any of the locations that you create, by all means, you can create branded assets for those. But for the directory brand, yeah, you want to try to build branded assets for that. If you can get a GBP for your directory brand, get one. I had one and it got suspended because I conflated. And that was my fault. It was my problem that it was completely my fault that it got suspended because I did some stupid things that ambiguated what Google understood about TreeCare HQ, the brand. And I made a mistake, and thank God I did that before I started teaching it. And I experienced and I realized what had happened once it was suspended. And so I switched up what I was teaching to have separate brands. That's why there's two brands now, directory brand and a local lead gen brand specifically. Because before I tried to combine the two, directory plus lead gen under the TreeCare HQ brand, and it caused Google to kind of slant what it understood about TreeCare HQ more as a tree service company than a marketing company or a directory/marketing company. And so it kept my TreeCare HQ local lead generation GBPs that were set up as tree service GBPs, but my TreeCare HQ marketing agency GBP was suspended. And so it ambiguated or polluted what Google understood about my brand. So that's why I separated them to instead having TreeCare HQ, which is the directory and marketing agency, and now the lead gen brand is Felling Pro. It was to disambiguate the two, but I'm still, even over a year and a half later, over a year and a half later now, actually, there's still some issues that TreeCare HQ is suffering from because I polluted my brand. So yeah, to answer your question, you want to promote the brand, but be strict about it's a directory and a marketing agency. Does that make sense? Or, a growth agency, whatever you want to call it. But you want to separate that from your local lead generation brand, if that's clear. But yes, you want to build a brand for it. Okay. As much as possible. You want to have a national directory that ranks well in, whatever country you're targeting. You want to build the brand up as much as possible. Okay. Should we build, I see a follow-up question in chat. Should we create entity assets for directory even if we can't get a GBP for it? Yeah, you should. You just might have to just omit a street address, right? If you are going to attempt to try to get GBP at some point, then you still want to assign city, state, and zip code to the business, so to speak, even if it doesn't have a physical location yet. Pick an area that if you were to get a GBP, you would try to secure it there. That way you can treat it as a service area business, even though it doesn't have a GBP, right? So that it's going to be company name and then city, state, zip. So that would be the name and address kind of data points of NAPW, right? Name, address, phone number, website. So you still want to have a website and a phone number, but you don't actually have a physical location. So you can still treat it as such by naming name, physical address, but only listing like it was a service area business, city, state, zip, or postal code, right? And then phone number and website. And so you can still treat it as a local business, right? Or a brand that has a physical location, even though it doesn't. Okay. So yes, you still want to build branded assets. And the reason why you want to try to use that same location, if possible, is because if you end up getting a GBP later, then it would be congruent with all the assets that were already created. Hopefully that's clear. Okay. Ozzy says, how do you go from the basic $99 a month services to full-on retainer SEO services? Is there any downside to pitching full SEO services during the discovery call? No, not at all. Depends on how the conversation goes. Look, you guys understand the whole reason of having the lower cost front-end services is to open up the ability to close more sales. You guys get it? Like honestly, my point, and look, actually my strategy has changed to where I do like pitching the lower end services actually more because they're easy to fulfill and easy to manage and maintain. And they're not usually performance based, they're activity based. As long as we are producing the deliverables that we're guaranteed every month, then they stay subscribed, right? It's not performance based. And as soon as we get into results and performance based services, that's when the retainer goes up, right? They're going to ascend to higher level plans. So I actually like pitching the lower end services because it's like one and done. Once we get them set up and they're everything's set up, which is that's the hard work, right? It's all kind of front end heavy and getting everything set up. And I'm trying to streamline that as much as possible. But once it's up and running, it's basically on autopilot. And I love those because people don't cancel those very often. There's very little for us to do as far as management or maintaining the campaigns. There is a little bit of work, but it's very little compared to doing performance-based stuff. So, but if I'm on a conversation or having a conversation with a potential client, right, a contact about, and they already have a decent online presence, maybe they've got decent reviews, they're ranking fairly well in their local area, and et cetera, then, maybe they've already got an answering service. Most of them don't, but maybe they already have an answering service or whatever. Then I may pitch them on, well, hey, kind of a higher level retainer based service that will be like, hey, look, you're doing fairly well in your immediate local area, but we can expand that out, 2 or 3 times the current area that you're covering. That's because of the competition levels. This is what we're going to have to charge. We do have a kind of more holistic SEO plan for achieving that, as well as remarketing, as well as comeback campaigns and email marketing for your existing clients, et cetera, reviews, all of that. It's all wrapped up into this larger retainer package or this larger service package that we have available. If that's reasonable and you're ready for it, would you like to learn more about that? And if they do, then we can talk about it. And I started it used to be $850 a month, but now it's basically, well, it depends on the competition level, but it's around $1,000 a month, if that makes sense. If they're ready for it, you pitch it to them. But the whole point is during the conversation, you'll discover whether they're ready for that or not. And if they're not, now you've got front end low cost services that you can pitch to them instead. And as I said, most of the time, we're going to find multiple front end services that the company actually needs, right? But when that is the case, then I'm going to typically revert to pitching either reviews or AI answering service, depending on where they are at with their business, what their most pressing needs are, right? But yeah, all I did for the first year and a half of this process, guys, was pitch full on retainer based services. At the time, I was charging, my starting price was $850 a month. And for the first year and a half, that was the only pitching I ever did. Every sales call that was booked was specifically to pitch that service only. But what I found was, again, it's easier to land a client and build rapport with them and ascend them up to higher level service packages, service subscriptions, if you can develop some rapport and some trust with them, right? Like, in other words, if you get them hooked or get them to sign up for a lower cost service that then you provide consistently for them, it does what it says it does. And through that process, you continue to develop the relationship with the client through additional communication, etc. Then it becomes much easier to ascend them and upsell them to additional services, add-on services or larger retainer packages, whatever. So that again, guys, do you understand? It is much harder to close a new sale than it is to sell more to an existing customer. Do you get it? It's much easier to sell more to somebody that has already given you their credit card and already spent money than it is to get that first sale. And so, in my opinion, and what I found is that over time, guys, you develop relationships with these people that, it could be 2, 3 years down the road, and all of a sudden you get a call out of the blue where they want to inquire about adding new services, right? Because you did something for them 2 or 3 years ago. I'll give you an example. There's a company in Florida called Gerard's Tree Service. Gerard's Tree Service, and they're in St. Mary, Florida, or something like St. Charles, St. James City, excuse me, St. James City, Florida. There we are, right there. He was a client of mine like 4 years ago, and was a client for about a year and a half or 2 years, whatever it was. And remember, there was this is in the what is it, Fort Myer area of Florida. I think that's near Tampa and stuff like that. Anyway, it's the it's yeah, it's on the Bay side, so the Gulf of America side. Used to be Gulf of Mexico. But anyway, they got hit by a significant hurricane. I think it was 2 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago now, whatever it was. They got hit by a horrible hurricane, and it just wiped out Pine Island, which is where they are. Pine Island is where St. James City is. Anyway, long story short, it basically wiped out the whole fucking island. And so there was no trees and everything else. And so I ended up because I felt like he was swamped too. The Gerard Sequoia is the guy's name who owned the company. He just sold it, by the way, to another tree contractor. And that's what I'm getting at. This guy was a client of mine for several years, good client. Then the hurricane hit and he was swamped with cleanup work to where he couldn't take on any new calls or anything else because he's been a contractor for many years. So he had a big customer base. And because of the hurricane and all the damage, he was doing cleanup work for like all past customers and everybody in the community, et cetera. And so he canceled services with me, but I told him, hey, listen, I respect what you're doing and I understand what you're going through. And I'm so sorry because of all the shit. So I'm going to continue doing SEO work for you anyways. And so I did for 6 more months. I did additional, I kept maintaining his SEO campaign, even though he wasn't paying me. I stopped billing him, but I kept doing it for him for 6 months. And eventually I canceled. I contacted him and just let him know, hey, look, I've been doing this for 6 months. I can't keep doing this forever. And he's like, no, I really appreciate what you did for me, blah, blah, blah. But we'll just go ahead and let this cancel. I'm actually thinking about selling the business, blah, blah, blah. That was 2 or 3 years ago. About 2 weeks ago, I get a call from Gerard's Tree Service. Well, actually, it was about 2 months ago when he first contacted me and told me that he had a buyer that was potentially going to buy the company. And so he said, I might have some questions for you. And I said, hey, or he might have some questions for you, blah, blah, blah. I said, just either you or him contact me whenever the sale is done, and I'm happy to have a chat. Well, then about 2 weeks ago, I get a call from Gerard, and he said, hey, I got the company sold and been working with the new owner, and blah, blah, blah. And now we're ready to start talking about adding some marketing services. So that whole story was basically just to tell you guys, again, it's about creating relationships through this process with very basic services to start. Because then again, guys, the thing is, if you do this in volume, you don't need to try to close the sale on every call, right? It's because you have all these warm leads that are in the sales cycle somewhere that are now in the hopper, so to speak. Like, in other words, they're in queue to eventually buy something. And so if you do this and you do this right, and you get the call, your booked sales call appointments coming in at a high volume, which is what the whole DHA program is about, is creating sales opportunities, right? And a high volume of sales opportunities. And so you just work those calls or those appointments the way that I'm teaching, which is, again, you have conversations with them, you pitch them pitch them if they're ready to sign up for higher price services, you send them to the checkout page. But if they're not ready, again, it's non-pushy. We're not pushing them to do anything. It's a very, very kind of passive way to get them to stay in touch or engaged with us so that when they are ready, they're going to come buy stuff. And it works because over time, like I said, over time, you'll start getting stuff that you worked on months ago will start popping and closing as sales because of this type of a model. And so for those of you that are desperate for leads right now, you can be more aggressive in your pitching using the same kind of method, right? Directory outreach, get them booked a call, and then you can be more aggressive with your pitch. I don't need to do that, right? My business is doing well enough to where I'm not desperate. I definitely want to increase revenue, but that's why I can be more passive about it. And I think it is a much better way to sell because, guys, I don't have to pitch hard to anybody, full stop. And I tell them that right at the beginning of the call. I've said that many times on Hump Day Hangouts. Right at the beginning of the call, hey, listen, we're going to do 2 things on the call. We're going to review your listing, make sure everything's accurate, make any changes to it, make sure you're happy with it. Then after that, I'm going to introduce some problems that we identified through the process of optimizing your listing, and I want to bring that to your attention, and then provide you with some low-cost solutions to help you to start to resolve those. Does that make sense? Should we continue our conversation? Nod your head. And they say, yeah, sure, let's go. And then and by the way, just so you know, I'm not going to do any hard sales tactics. I'm going to show you what we have. I show you how it works and how it's improved other contractors or tree companies in the same kind of or similar situation. And if it makes sense for us to work together, great. Hey, if not, the door is always open to you. You're always welcome to come come join or come at any time that you want. In fact, I'm going to send you some emails after we get off the call to give you some more information about what we talk about today on today's call. Is that fair? Should we proceed? Nod your head, right? Sure, let's go. Let's do it. Okay, I'm ready. Whatever. Get it? So there is no downside to pitching full SEO, but it gives you an opportunity when you have the low cost options to close more sales because there's going to be a lot of circumstances where companies are not going to be ready to commit to a full on SEO service, especially when they don't know you, right? Develop the relationship a bit, build some rapport, some goodwill. It becomes a much easier sale. That's the whole point. Okay, Raj says, I have a basic website. Can you help with showing up at, near, top on Google, stuff like that? That's got to be a joke question. Sorry, Raj, if that was an actual genuine question, we would need a hell of a lot more detail than that, man. So I'm going to assume that was kind of a joke. Ken says, how important are near me searches in 2025? They're important. I mean, go to Google search. Look, I understand Google is losing market share very quickly, but local is one of the things it's not affecting quite as rapidly as it is in traditional like organic based search, non-local search. So it is I'm not, as SEOs, we need to evolve beyond just optimizing for Google now. That's plain. I mean, that's clear as day, right? That's very apparent. But near me searches, if you're using Google, and a lot of people for local searches still do, right? Most people still do. If you go to do a search query on your phone, it always suggests, if it thinks the search query is with local intent, it always suggests the near me, right? Always in Google search. And so, of course, it's still important. And interestingly enough, I did testing on this several years ago. There was Angel Cruz, I think his name is. He did a training course many years ago called about near me searches. And at the time, as long as you targeted near me in the SEO title, you could rank like crazy. And so we capitalized on that for a couple of years. And then over time, Google shifted away from having near me as an optimized term on the site, especially in the main optimization elements like SEO titles, H1s, things like that. It started to have a diminished, like it was not producing the same type of an effect, like positive gains from it. And it became more about proximity with what Google understood about the business and the website, which in local search should be associated with the business. And so Google would treat near me searches much more with about proximity and what Google understood about the business and how that was it relevant to the searcher based upon the query and where the searcher was located at the time they searched, if that makes sense. But interestingly enough, Joy Hawkins, I'm on her email list for I think it's the Sterling Sky blog or whatever. And whenever I get an email from her, she usually has a video and sometimes an article too, or a Twitter, an X post or something like that. And she did one, I don't know, about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, something like that. It was talking about testing with near me searches and having near me. And she was showing in her blog post about near me searches that Google is actually even using near me in but the way that Google does it in some of their own SEO titles is not near me, but near you. So search for a blah, blah, blah near you. Right. And so because the algorithm has evolved, right, and now has large language model integrated with it, Google understands it's no longer a keyword based algorithm. Right. So we used to have to hammer the near me term in order for it to rank better, which is because, again, we were trying to hammer that term and increase the density of that term on the page, et cetera. We don't have to do that anymore because near me is what a searcher would search, but the company that provides the solution for whatever the searcher is searching for would be promoting as near you. And so what she was showing, which I completely understand, I've not done any testing myself, but it's logical to me, is that now even Google is optimizing for near you, which is optimizing for near me searches. In other words, they're putting in their SEO titles, their meta titles, whatever the product or service is near you. so that it ranks for near me search queries and it satisfies it. And so I've not done any testing with that, but it's logical to me that that has made a resurgence. And so what she was saying was it's not necessary to try to squeeze in the near me terms, especially if you just optimize, like, so for example, saying like, tree removal service near you in, and then mention the city name. Right now you've covered all bases in the SEO title or the whatever, H1 or whatever it is you're optimizing for, right? Tree removal or tree removal service is the service. Then near you, which would satisfy the tree removal near me or tree removal service near me, etc. search query. And then in, Pikeville, Kentucky. So now you've satisfied a search query, general query plus near me, right? General query plus the location modifier. Does that make sense? So do I think it's important? Yeah, I do. I've not done any specific testing with that recently, but I do think it's important because I still see it all the time in Google search. The near me suggestions. Is maintaining a blog still necessary for local SEO in 2025? I would say yes, but externally, not on the main website. If you're going to be blogging on the main website, you have to be smart about it so that you don't create competing pages, right? Redundancy, duplication. That is a significant problem because of the helpful content update. And I do a ton of audits and competitive analysis, link analysis reviews for local search queries every week. I do a number of SEO audits and competitive link analyses for local SEO or local search queries every single week. And I see that not so much cannibalization now. I see competing pages all the time, which is where there are multiple pages on the same domain that are relevant to a particular query. So Google will serve more than one page from the same domain for that query. So give it an impression, but it will be all pages will be significantly lower in the search results, the ones that were given impressions, than it would have been had only one page been relevant for that query. It would have performed and ranked higher, if that's clear. So, and I see that all the time because I see a lot of SEOs that are still, look, I did it, guys, for SEO, for local SEO. For years, all I did was publish content on the blog of the main website that would then syndicate out to syndication network properties, right? So through IFTTT is the app or the service that we would use to do the distribution, the syndication, et cetera. And it worked like crazy. And so all we would do is just target, variants of each keyword. So we'd publish a new blog post for every variant of every search query that the client wanted to rank for. And it worked. It worked incredibly well for years, guys. But now that's creating competing pages because it's redundancy duplication, which is inefficient for Google to crawl, and it's not helpful for users either. And so the helpful content update is specifically addressed all of that stuff as it relates to local. And so what I recommend is it doesn't make sense to continue publishing content to try to cover the different products and services and or locations that the company serves. Yes, but do it externally because you want to have more content published on the web so that the large language models ingest it, so that when somebody's querying Perplexity, for example, or X or Grok or whatever, and if there's enough content out there that the language models have ingested, it's much more likely for your client to be mentioned in the chat results, right? But you don't want to do it on the main domain because that's going to create competing pages. Redundancy, inefficiencies, it will lower the site quality score. So the site won't perform as well. And it's no longer on a page level basis, guys. Remember, Google looks at an individual page as part of a larger whole now. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago, it was literally, unless the domain had a penalty applied against it, you could literally optimize at the page level only. And the rest of the site could be garbage. As long as there wasn't a penalty applied, you could still rank a page. It's not like that anymore, right? Because Google's looking at the page as part of a larger whole. It looks at the whole of the site and applies a quality score as a multiplier to every page on the site, so to speak. If that's clear. So I always recommend continuing publishing blog content to cover branded content, right? To publish branded content that is always tying the products or services and or locations back to the company, the brand, but do it on external blogs. Google Sites or Blogger, Tumblr, WordPress, Weebly, Medium, any of those types of kind of blogs are perfect for that. Okay. ECAT says, how do I get my business to show up in the local PAP local pack on Google Maps. Again, this is like the Raj question. We don't have time. We got 4 minutes. That is a very broad question. If you add some more specificity to the question, I can help. Because we could spend the next 3 hours talking about all the things that you could do to rank in Google Maps. Best thing to do is have a verified Google business profile that's optimized thoroughly, connected to a well-structured, optimized site that is efficient without bloat and redundancy, which is what we just talked about. And then to increase brand relevance, which means by building branded and supporting assets, publishing branded content, and getting reviews. Those are the 3 most important things right now. The 2 most important things are branded location authority or strength and site efficiency. And then you validate those by receiving reviews. Does that make sense? So getting engagement signals, which includes collecting reviews, right? So to rank, branded location authority or brand strength for a specific location, efficient site that's structured well without redundancy, duplication, etc. And then you validate the ranking performance and maintain it by engagement signals and collecting reviews, which is part of engagement signals, in my opinion. Does that make sense? That's the 3 big ones. The 3 biggest levers we can pull, those are them right there. But then each one of those levers have a number of items that have to be executed in order to pull those levers, so to speak. So Brad says, how do citations and local directories impact my SEO in 2025? Are they still relevant? Yes, they are, because they are validation signals for the brand. I think they're critically important. It's not quantity, it's quality. Having well-developed, well-optimized citations and then spoon feeding those data points back to Google, guys. Do you understand? It's not just about being listed, but it's about making sure that Google is aware of the listings, right? So get listed on as many places. It doesn't have to be business directory listings, right? Those are structured citations. Those are helpful, but you can also have name, address, phone number, and website mentions on other platforms so those are unstructured citations. They still count, but collect all the page URLs that have accurate information published about that location and then spoon feed that data back to Google. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can link to them with Google Business Posts. The Learn More button from Google Business Posts, that's a direct linked connection from the GBP to external page URLs that have accurate information published about the business. It forces Google to recognize that there are validating signals on the web, validating page URLs that corroborate what Google understands about that business location. So GB Post, number 1. Number 2, same as attributes in local business schema, right? Thoroughly optimize your local business schema to reference those external page URLs that have accurate information published about the business in the same as attributes, right? And then an ID page, strategy number 3, right? Embed all of those, put them in local business schema on the ID page, unless you're embedding your location landing page that has local business schema into the ID page. If you embed the landing page into the ID page and it already has local business schema, it will import the schema from the embedded ID location landing page. So you don't need to duplicate schema on the ID page is what I'm saying. But you can also then take a Google Sheet and put all the page URLs that have accurate information published about the business, the same URLs that you put in the same as attributes to the local business schema, and the same URLs that you're going to link to with Google Business Posts. You put all of those in the Google Sheet. Publish the Google Sheet and embed that in the ID page. And then you designate the ID page URL as the ID page URL, right? You designate the ID page URL in the @ID field of the local business schema. So that when Google and large language models, when they come to the location landing page and they crawl the schema and they see that dedicated resource, which is what that is, unique resource identifier, so the ID page is for, it goes to that page and then spiders out to all those validating data points that corroborate that business location information, right? So of course they are still valid and relevant. And in fact, I think they're more valid and relevant now than they've ever been. And that's not a joke, guys. Brand strength is the most important thing in local SEO, followed by site efficiency, in my opinion. Last question, and we're right at the 5 o'clock mark. Jimmy says, how would I establish a local service area presence that will trigger Google Business Profile to create a listing and allow one-click verification? Good question. Not sure, but what you can do is you can try. I've had this occur about half the times that I've done it, half the times not. And that is, if you want to try to get one-click verification or email or phone verification, and or text verification, instead of having the video shit that they make us do most of the time now, is to create the website, create citations, social media properties and profiles that you do some activity on, Publish a press release, preferably a premium press release announcing the business. Have all the NAP data correct everywhere, and publish citations. I like to use Yext Power Listings specifically for this because you get it done very quickly with very well optimized listings that sync out across, depending on where they are. In the US with the public street address, it's about 65 business directory listings. You wait for all of that, all of those kind of validating signals to be created, collect all of that, create the ID. Everything that I just described in the previous question is precisely what you do, right? Collect all those validating page URLs and put them into the same as attributes of the local business schema that you're going to put into the location landing page. And then you're going to create an ID page that you're going to designate in the local business schema or in the local business schema, excuse me. Submit all of that stuff for indexing. And again, the press release, all of that stuff, give it a good month, 6 weeks, 2 months. So 4 to 8 weeks after you've gotten all of those assets built and you're made sure that Google is aware of them through the same as attributes of the local business schema and the ID page. And then you submit verification or try to verify GBP, because now there's enough data on the web to support that that is a valid business location, right? And I've about half the times that I've done that over the last 2 years, which I have done a number of times. I'm not teaching others to do that because they're still risky. They're still likely to get suspended at some time. But I've been able to get about half of the attempts approved through a phone, SMS, or an email instead of a video verification. Okay. And sometimes you just make it's not the I've made changes to GBPs and not had any trigger re-verification or suspension by doing the same strategy. If you're going to change a GBP, update everything on the web first and allow everything to kind of settle for a bit before trying to make the change. And then when you make the change, it usually will take immediately because there's enough data on the web to validate that revision or that change. Okay, hopefully you're clear. Okay, guys, I'm going to look at comments really quickly and I'm going to wrap up because we're after 5 p.m. and I've got to wrap up. I'm behind this week. So let's see. Greg says, hey, Bradley, Adam. Oh, that's Greg. What's up? And he says, towing roadside service. Howdy. What can I do without creating a new GBP listing that will prompt Google Business Profile to create a new listing? Oh, that was the same one that we just, so towing and roadside must be Jimmy Mercer. So hopefully that makes sense, Jimmy. Hopefully I answered your question. Like I said, just create the assets first, get everything published, publish a premium press release, preferably a premium press release, because the higher authority distributions it helps. It really does. And I would say if you for example, one of the white label services we have is called Brand Builder. Brand Builder would help. Brand Builder is something that I would do if I was going to try to verify a GBP and try to not have to do video verification. Brand Builder is a great way because that's specifically what Brand Builder is for, to build brand authority to a specific location, which acts very much like all the things that I just described. Okay. Greg says, I was locked out of my entire business account for 6 days due to a TFA issue last week. Turned out it was Verizon was blocking that caller number. So I understand. Yeah, that sucks, man. This is bullshit. This two-factor authentication, et cetera, sucks. Thanks, Bradley. Your link analysis on my site showed best to focus on homepage links, but this one looked too good not to deep link to internal links. Thanks. Yeah, and there are going to be times like that, Greg. Certainly. Remember, look at your link sources and determine what the best match is. And that's what you want to link to because you'll get more value from the link that way. I promise you. So I've said, should we create? Oh, we already answered that. Wayne says, hey, Bradley, got to call you this week. Feel free, Wayne. If you don't have my number, just email me and I'll email back to you. It's bbenner@semanticmastery.com. Just shoot me an email, man. I'm happy to have a chat with you, Wayne, anytime.